name is Jennifer, and I'm with AARP Houston, and we're so grateful to have Melissa back with us. We do this in the spring, I guess, winter, spring. So we're happy to do this again. And if you're not familiar with AARP, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan social mission organization dedicated to advocating for older adults and allowing them to choose how they live as they age. So it's a good cause, and we like to remind everyone that is a caregiver to, always keep themselves in mind as they're caring for a loved one and take the time to care for themselves. And we are thankful for Melissa that she can help us do that. So I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. Whether you're watching live now or recorded, as we're recording this session, I'm really glad that you're here. So I have a little bit of a menu for us for our experience together today. First of all, as Jennifer said, I'm Melissa. I'm a licensed clinical mental health professional, and I have been leading these with AARP Texas for a number of years now and feel really grateful to be able to do this and share mindfulness experiences. And also the practical side of it, how I'm actually using it in my own life, but also in practice with caregivers. I was a long distance caregiver myself while watching my father be a caregiver of my stepmom who had early onset Alzheimer's. And so through that experience, I ran a nonprofit for a number of years and now have transitioned to supporting other nonprofits and caregivers, as well as just individuals with their mental health. So I'm very thankful to be able to share this with y'all. So I'm going to share my screen. So a little patience is required, obviously, as as I had a little some interesting things. So let's look at see. Hold on just a second. Yeah. This is where I would get my friend Terry, who does something called PB&J, Postures, Breath, and Joy, to give us some joy. But since you aren't able to share, we're going to have to imagine it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let's see, optimize for sound. Okay, fingers crossed that I got this going. And hopefully, all right. And so feel free to um, type this into the chat box if you can see um, the full layout. Hopefully you can. Um, I think you're seeing my screen there. Oh, goodness. All right. Yeah, this is very creative. You can see my desktop. I'm sorry about that. All right, here we go. So um, hopefully you can see that now. Both uh, the emoji me and the regular me. All right, fantastic. Okay. So as we explore all of this together today, um, I want to just gently remind you of uh, what the series is and entails. A mindfulness series will be this week and then 2 weeks from now. If you want to take a screenshot of this, this is your unique link for the next session. So this is our first session. We'll have another one in 2 weeks, and then we will pick it back up in May, and it will go every other week through June. So if you want to take a quick screenshot, and it's events.aarp.org/Texas-223-mind. So now that we've got that, let's just settle in. So the first thing I would like to request is to take your eyes just a little bit off your screen. So wherever you are, and however you're participating, if you're in the car, please don't take your eyes off the road. But as you take your eyes just slightly off the screen, let them settle on something that is somewhat neutral for you. So it might just be a color, it might be something uh, uh, not vibrant, but just something easeful or soothing or more neutral. And then, however you can, begin to draw some attention just at the edge of your nose and take a gentle breath in. So breathe in long, full, and deep. And exhale for as long as it feels comfortable for you. And let's do that one more time. Just breathing in through the edge of the nose, noticing if you can feel a temperature as you breathe in. And as you exhale, notice what is just a little softer or different. Okay. Go ahead and bring your eyes back to the screen. So you've taken, hopefully, and set aside some time to be here today. And in that setting aside, I would consider this an investment in you. Our experience today and our title is Caring for the Caregiver. So, but really, this is for everyone. We will learn some basics of mindfulness and what that means. We're going to do practices. So, we're not just going to talk about mindfulness, but we're actually going to make it experiential so that you can feel or notice it in the body and how the body responds to it. And then we're going to take a look a little bit more about the differences between wellness and well being. And again, move into some more practices. So hopefully that sounds like a pretty good menu. So let's just settle in for a moment. What does that mean? So when I say presence, I'm simply referring to this idea of I'm not out there somewhere in the future and I'm not looking back behind me, but I'm doing the best I can to stay in my seat, to stay in the act of noticing what I'm experiencing in real time rather than racing forward in my thoughts or ruminating back into the past. So, how can I truly stay present? So, I have a couple of requests or suggestions for you. So, find some focus. So, in order to do that, you might consider, I'm sure most of us have a cell phone. And if it is within arm's reach, maybe just put it an inch or two further away. If you have multiple screens open on your computer, can you close those extra screens just for now? I promise whatever it is that you have after this will still be waiting for you when you get there. But if it's possible to stay and hone in as best you can, you will get more out of this rather than the hour will go by and you'll think, what did I just experience? So, how can you find just a little bit more focus? How can you create some ease in your body right now? So, let's check in just a little bit with that. What about however you are, whether you are seated or standing, or whether you're walking around with headphones on, or however you're experiencing this, what is one thing that you can do to create just a little bit more comfort? I am well aware that we are not all um, in a sort of a what the world would call a healthy body necessarily. Some of us experience chronic pain. Some of us really never feel a sense of comfort in the body. And so, whatever that baseline is for you, see if we can not exasperate it. So, oftentimes, when we sit for a long period of time, then we actually feel, right, some discomfort in our back or whatever. So, really taking some time and opportunity to notice what you can do to keep coming back to feeling the least amount of effort in the body and the greatest amount of ease that's possible for you in this moment. Okay, so find some focus, find some ease, and then seek some safety. So what I mean by that is our body is constantly looking for problems. It's looking for distraction. It's looking for what might come up. How can we anticipate the next shoe to drop, especially if you're a caregiver? So, whatever environment you're in this moment, I'm going to show you just a simple, simple technique called orienting to your space. So, what that means is just look around. So, you might look over your right shoulder or left shoulder. You might even look under your chair or around your room. and remind yourself that you are wherever you are. Again, you're not in the future, you're not in the past, but you're right in this particular space. And we're not judging whether we're good or bad. Okay is fine. Are we just okay in this moment? Not there's not a fire burning. There's not something necessarily that you need to attend to in this moment. Hopefully, you've guarded this time. And if that is the case, ask yourself, am I safe in this moment? Am I okay in this moment? And then notice what happens. Can your jaw relax a little bit? In order to do that, you might need to close a door. You might need to, again, turn down distractions. You might need to wear headphones. You might need to gently remind others that this is your time, whatever that is, so that you don't feel like you've got to constantly be on guard or on call. So it's orienting to the space. Check your body before your brain. Oh gosh, if we could all do this. So I'm going to invite you to simply notice. And one gentle way to check in with the body before the brain is to meet your body. Hi. And I don't know if you woke up a certain way this morning. I woke up with a little stiffness in my neck. And so I might just roll my shoulders, and that would be movement. So meet your body, which means notice what's happening, add a little bit of movement. And then the third part of, again, meeting yourself as you are is memory. So what can I do to actually create some meaningful experience today? So I might suggest that you find a pen and a piece of paper, or I know some of us type things in our phone, preferably handwritten. It just has a different effect on the brain, but certainly you can type some notes in your phone. But I would encourage you to write at least 3 things today. So whether it's taking a screenshot of this, that's great. Or if you want to jot down focus, ease, safety, or maybe meet, move, and memory sort of resonates with you. Meeting my body, having a little wiggle movement, and how do I want to remember or create a memory marker? If we're going to take time to be present and to focus, um, I don't expect you to remember everything. I certainly don't. And so we can use these just tools, such as just jotting something down. Another way to create a memory marker is when we finish today, phone a friend, or journal, or find a way to talk about it in conversation. Today I did this thing online, and I did this one thing that was really actually kind of cool. Or I don't know, what do you think about it? If you talk about it, you are 50% more likely to actually remember it. And if you experience it, you're greater than 50% more likely to remember it. So if you can do something experiential today, it will help that memory marker. Last here is reset often. So I won't go through all this every time we meet, but these are really key points in order really for anything that you do that you need to be present and focus for. When I say reset often, I think about the phrase small moments many times, meaning I don't expect you to, right, attain mindfulness, enlightenment, or some kind of um, really even pleasant state. It's, can we meet whatever we're experiencing in just a little bit of a different way so that we can have a new relationship to it? Which means we need to have a whole bunch of tools in our back pocket so that we can do different things at different times that give us lots of options. So, reset often, which is small moments many times, small moments many times. Um, I am hoping that you will add in your chat box. I am going to play just a little bit of defining mindfulness. This comes from Dan Harris, who has a meditation app. Used to be called 10% Happier. I'm not sure what it's called now. But I like the way that he defines mindfulness. And why are we even, right? How are we even bringing these two together, caring for a caregiver and this idea of mindfulness? Well, let's watch a little bit of the video and then we'll come back to this. So, all right. And please do add in the chat if you can hear it and see it. I would like to know.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. Actually become pissed. There's no buffer.
I wanted you to get that one point. So I'm really curious if you want to type in the chat box, based on listening to that, based on what you are familiar with. There we go. Voila. Based on what you're familiar with mindfulness, what resonated most with you with that little short video? I'm really good at silence.
And they can unmute themselves. So you're welcome to talk or put it in the chat.
Okay. I'm going to read what someone just put in the chat. I once read that when in traffic, we should pretend everyone else in the other cars are our best friends. Oh, that's a lovely thought. To actually assign them as people we care about. Oh, I love that framing. Yeah. There's a principle called generosity, and I love that, right? It's this idea that we assume the best intent in the other person. If we come out with a negative and we're assuming they're intending harm, we're immediately putting up a shield of protection. But if we can have that assumption of good intent, then how can we behave differently? But what would you say, and it's okay if you don't know, what would you say is your definition, or what is mindfulness for you? And in this quiet, I am breathing. Observation. Being connected to exactly where I am in any moment. Yeah. I love that. I love that you put where you are. I think I would also add to that how I am. So in other words, how can I connect to the way that I'm experiencing that particular moment? Because it's my perception, right? Your perception. I like connecting to what I feel in my body. Yeah, being present. Excellent. Yeah. So mindfulness in and of itself, these are great. Feel free to continue to add to the chat box. And when you do that, you're helping your own focus. So know that you're definitely putting points in that memory box. This is one of the most beautiful definitions, I think, of mindfulness. It's attributed to Viktor Frankl, but I do need to double check the references because I've heard several referring to this. But that space between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies growth and our freedom. And when we think about mindfulness, I was listening to Sharon Salzberg, who is a mindfulness meditation teacher, who I really enjoy. And she has this incredible practice of inner critic. But she was asking a group of children, what is mindfulness? And one kid said, when you don't hit someone else in the mouth. Yeah. So if we think about, wow, what is that? To not hit someone in the mouth? Well, there is an element of self-control in that. There is an element of emotional intelligence. But how do we even get there? It's basically to know what we're feeling when we're beginning to feel it. It's as if we're aware of what's cooking, right? If we can be aware of what's cooking or happening, then we actually have more agency to not get freaked out about it. So having emotions and feelings and in relationship to our experience is basically just being human, right? We don't want to suppress our emotions. It's not about being passive. Mindfulness has nothing to do with being passive. We're allowed to experience joy and suffering and anger and sadness and grief and um, neutralness, right? We're allowed to have all of those experiences. It's what do we want to do with those emotions? Can we be aware of it as it's happening so we have more avenues, more options to choose from? It creates the space for us to even see that there are options. Dan Harris said this that mindfulness is a skill of knowing what's happening in your head without getting carried away by it. Yeah. And I don't think I really even need to go into all the benefits. You can only, I mean, can you imagine if you had a little less reactivity and more responsiveness? I mean, the benefits are right awareness, self-compassion. It enhances your capacity to be non-judgmental. It connects us to each other. And this idea of greater humanity and when do we need it more than in this moment right now? It'll decrease your stress and cortisol. It improves your impulse control. And it will also strengthen, I venture to say that it will strengthen every relationship in your life. And that is a big, big boast right there. So, that big boast is really the key, whether you're caregiving now or a future caregiver or in any kind of human relationship. If you can find a way to be with the emotion so you have more options, it's like looking at I don't know how many of you, I was traveling recently and I'm in the bus to go back to the car parking lot. And I just see these sea of cars, and I had a sudden moment of like, I don't remember where I'm parked. I have no idea. And it was just like this sea of cars. And then as he was going down this particular lane, there I saw my bumper sticker. And it was like if I was looking at the big all of the problems all at once, I didn't have any clarity. But when I allowed myself to kind of be with it, and as we drove down, then slowly, slowly, I realized that I was being right supported. So if we can take a step back and instead of right taking the smaller view that it can only be one way, but really look back and see, do we have more options and opportunities here? I think someone just wrote in the chat. Seeing ourselves as the observer as well as the subject. I love that. So this is a really easy example here of, and many of you may have done this before, but the idea of seeing our emotions as weather. But the key point is here that you yourself are actually the sky. You do not change in terms of the solidness. If you can find a place within yourself, or even just imagine being something that doesn't change, and it's the emotions that can kind of go through. We had a couple of cloudy days here in where I live in New Mexico, and which is unusual. And it just felt like, oh, when will these cloudy days end? And then, of course, it's beautiful today. And so, right, having that perspective that things change just like the weather. So, I would love to see, can you meet yourself where you're at today? Would you say, what weather, emotional weather, are you experiencing? And so, if you want to type that into the chat box, kind of as a check-in, to see what your emotional weather is. And this particular framing allows us to externalize. So, in other words, I am not anxious. I am not like anxiety itself, but I'm experiencing anxiety. I am not uh, always angry, right? I might be experiencing frustration and anger, but I'm just experiencing it. Like that is not who I am. And so I would be curious if you want to type into the chat box what your emotional weather is. Here's some couple of options, but certainly you can elaborate. Cloudy with a chance of thunderstorms. I thought you were going to put meatballs, but yeah, hopeful. Mm, yeah, I love that framing. Hope is actually an anchor into our body's capacity for seeing more options. I don't care how small a percentage your hope is, but if you can find a tiny anchor or a tiny crack in what you're experiencing, that allows for, again, more capacity for resiliency and hope. A bit of anxiety, but hopeful. Okay. Yeah. And so anxiousness, right? Anxiousness can become, like many emotions, a habit. And it's good to name it so that it actually moves outside of ourselves. Sharon Salzberg says, name the emotion before it names you. So if you can have that awareness, then that emotion doesn't actually take over your actions. Oh, can't see the options very well. Okay. Yeah. Mm, good question. How do I enhance that? Mm. Well, and now I've changed my screen. Thank you for sharing that with me. Um, I will work on that. That's the best I've got in this moment. I will work on that option. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So thank you for telling me, and we'll see how we go here. I certainly don't mean to make myself as big a box, and so we'll shift that out next time. She was saying she had difficulty reading it, and as someone who experiences a lot of difficulty seeing small font, I can relate. So how do we transition from, okay, we're aware of that, but in the big scheme of things, taking care of myself, it's too much. It's a lot. And I hear a lot of caregivers being able to say, I can only do this, or this takes up all of my time, or I'm full encompassed by work. And I think we can be so overloaded without a sense of this balancing act that we lose sight of what actually we're trying to do as a human. And I think very simply for me, if I can look at the difference between wellness and well being, it helps me clarify where I'm actually going in this sort of human body in this human life. We often think about, when I think about wellness, which is like a whole industry, right? Like people are trying to sell you self-care and tell you need to take bubble baths. Fine, if that makes you feel better, great. But I'm more interested in these tiny micro moments of things that can work with our nervous system. I think that is way more exciting than some standard recipe. So when we think about wellness, we often think about like that, like physical health. And unfortunately, in our in our world today, physical health is often prized as that's what you need to be successful. I'm going to challenge that a little bit to say, I think that it is so much more than that. I would rather have the opportunity to meet my body, my cranky hips, or my sore back, or uh, a chronic pain in my jaw, or a headache, with not that something is wrong with me, but that my body is giving me some physical messages. And so I cannot define my wellness based on what my body is experiencing in this moment. My wellness or worth is what we often equate. So I would suggest that we start to reframe a little bit and think about ourselves as, can we have overall well-being? And I know this sounds kind of lofty, right? Embodied presence. Well, what does that even mean? Right? For the simplest definition of presence is, I am here in this moment. Again, I'm not traveling, future tripping, and I'm not looking back in the rearview mirror, but I'm really focused on this moment. Am I okay? And how can I be embodied with it? In other words, can I be aware of my emotion? Can I be aware that I've got a little thing happening in my back and I want to wiggle and move? So this brings us back to that very first screen. Check in with yourself, and often, many times and often. So do you need a movement? Do you need to sigh right now? Do you need to take some water or take a sip of something, which is a nervous system resetter? So what do you need in this moment? And if you're not sure, this is a question to keep asking yourself until you can kind of have some awareness of what needs actually are. I often work with caregivers who say, I just don't know. I don't know what I need because I'm so outwardly focused on pleasing someone else or meeting other people's needs. So if there's any type of pause, like Viktor Frankl said, it's that moment we become aware of something and create some space. And in that space, we can actually ask ourselves, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Those are all basic needs. Have I had a shower today? um, and what do I need? And if we can meet those basic needs, then we can start to observe and look a little further beyond that. But if we're ignoring those, how are we expecting ourselves to have embodied presence? All right. So well-being, right, encompasses that self-awareness. How do we even get self-aware? Well, first of all, you got to want to. There is nothing I can say today to make you want to become self-aware. Um, Usually something happens, maybe an illness, maybe somebody says something to us that we feel sort of judged or surprised by. So anyway, there's often a catalyst that happens that drives us towards self-awareness. And I hope, instead of you needing to experience that catalyst, that you begin to ingest this idea that if I lean into some self-awareness, I have more options. So I don't know if you're jotting things down, but I would love to see in the chat box a couple of things that have resonated with you so far. So I'm just taking just a small pause. And again, self-awareness is just that idea that I am actually paying attention to my body's needs and wants and asking what is possible in this moment. All right, I'm going to keep going, but I would love to see maybe some things that you've jotted down so far. Ooh, somebody wrote, I like the reframe of I'm experiencing instead of I am. Ugh, yeah. That is one of the tenets of mindfulness, is this idea that we over-identify with our experience rather than with identifying with our values and our needs and um, what we, who we really are instead of what we're experiencing. Yeah, small moments many times. I love that too. Someone else said, pay attention to what my body is experiencing. Whoa. And this other note was, check your body before your brain. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So the next component of well-being is, right, emotional intelligence and growth. So if if I am I don't have to be anywhere. In other words, I, you can tell me if you're a recovering perfectionist or an active perfectionist, or maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum, an active procrastinator who tends to kind of avoid until there's a fire underneath you, right? Emotional intelligence just gives us this, right, self-awareness so that we can begin to find a little more balancing in our activities of daily living. And emotional intelligence is just a start, it's the tip. And that's all we need. If we have just a spark of awareness, then we're already on that growth path. I'd like to have a little caveat here to say many of you, either now or in the future, may be caring for someone that doesn't have the capacity for growth and change, whether it's due to cognitive impairment, whether it's due to a mental illness, whether it is due to a lack of will and desire for growth and change. And so this isn't about the person you're caring for. It is always coming back to, how do we have capacity for our own emotional intelligence, growth, and change? Because if we can begin to slowly be, right, just day by day, step by step, moving in that direction, it opens up the possibilities for something different. And that something different isn't changing the other person. That something different actually changes our relationship to what we're experiencing. In other words, we still might get angry. Yep. But how do I want to change my relationship to anger? Do I have more options for action as opposed to reaction? Okay. Self-care is a part of well-being, and I don't think I need to go into the long list. Many of us are pretty aware of what feels like self-care. A good question to ask about self-care: am I doing the thing to avoid something or to please something? Or am I doing the thing in order to meet a need or a desire that helps self-soothing and gives me a greater capacity? That is a really great way to check in. Is this self-care or am I checking out? And I would venture to say that checking out sometimes is not a bad thing. It's, is it habitual? And is it interfering with my activities of daily living? And is it physically harmful to me? So, in other words, is there a middle path here? So, we'll talk more about self care as we weave throughout our sessions. But I think it's really important to note that there's so many different avenues towards self care, and you get to decide what feels appropriate for you. But if you're not doing it, you're missing out. How in the world do you fit in all of the things of life without, right, smoothing the stone, so to speak? In other words, if all you have are rough edges, you're just going to keep bumping up against other people and poking with those rough edges. In other words, if you're chronically tired or hungry or right ignoring basic needs, how can I possibly have any emotional intelligence? That's like, whew, I don't know if I often equate sometimes when I'm feeling over hungry or overtired to a little bit of like a toddler. I'm expected to behave well, but I haven't fed myself. So, just that gentle reminder that self care is going to look like so many different avenues. And if you'd be willing to jot down one thing that really sort of fits that idea of finding balancing for you. Okay. Um, yeah. Positive relationships and support is pretty critical. The Harvard study, the longevity study, the longest longevity study that's out there that was studying why people were living longer and what were the key components to happiness. And I would say that the results of the study, the number one was support and that sense of purpose. And so if we have this support system, um, it's everything. We know we're not alone. It decreases isolation. Um, Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General of the United States, declared that loneliness was a pandemic. And I would venture to say that it probably still is. It is a chronic issue that so many people are experiencing. If you do not have support, I would urge you to make just a short list of someone that you think could be a support and see if you can move and make steps toward finding that. Okay, we've got other sessions that we'll talk more about how to secure that support. Whew, I love it. Someone said that as a way of self-care, they're receiving some energy work. I love that. So I'm not going to go through all the components of mindfulness, but I do think it's important to know that mindfulness is not about like being blank in the mind. Again, mindfulness is that knowing something is happening while it's happening and being aware of it so that you have spaciousness to make a different choice and have a different outcome. But in order to do that, there's some really key components here. Non-judgment is one of them. We are all our own critics, and we're constantly deciding whether something is good or bad or neutral. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is how our human brains are designed in order to protect ourselves. I will say that with mindfulness, it gives us that space. And then we have a different relationship to the things we thought that were good or bad or neutral. So let's just do just a tiny little practice. Um, I'm going to name a couple of things, and I want you to just say in your mind good, bad, neutral. Uh, Coffee. Some of you love it, some of you don't, some of you are ambivalent. Um, Rainy days. Some of you love it, feels comforting. Some of you hate it. Some of you feel neutral by it. Snowstorm. Some of you really enjoy the snow, the effects, what happens after. Some of you don't. Some of you find it neutral. Crowds, or let's redefine that. A party. Some of you say no, thank you. Some of you love it. Some of you are like, that's fine. Public speaking, right? You get the idea. We all have a different relationship to the experiences of being human. But when we become aware, right, then we can decide to shift or change our focus. So, non-judgment. Patience is a quality of mindfulness. Um, Patience is a really interesting one. So let's take just a short example of that. That was only about 30 seconds of quiet. No, my mic wasn't broken. It's with stillness, we often think we need to fill the void. And if we can cultivate more patience or more kindness toward the stillness or silence, we have a whole lot more options. And um, I love, someone reminded me of an earlier point, check your body before your brain. If in that practice of patience, you're creating a whole lot of story, can you move into the body? Is your heart pounding? Do you feel discomfort? Are you comfortable with it? You get to check in with the body, and it helps us get out of this idea that we're labeling or judging it to be a certain way. All right, I'm going to move through these pretty quickly, and we're going to cover most of these in the remainder of our sessions. But a beginner's mind, in other words, not assuming we know all things, mindfulness is there to offer us some teachings, meaning we get to experience this particular emotion, find that pause, and be curious. It helps incorporate trust. In other words, embodied presence, and another word for that would be self-trust. Can I trust my body to express the experience that it's having? And if you can't, that's also pretty normal. A lot of people can't. It's a practice, many times, many ways. And over time, I believe it's possible to have embodied trust. Non-striving, meaning we're okay with what is when it happens. One of my favorite phrases is, which is so hard for me, I don't mind what happens. If I can move toward a goal, but then I let go of outcome, that's that concept of non-striving. So it's not that I'm goalless or that I'm passive with things. Not at all. I can still be moving in a direction of growth, but I can let go of how it unfolds. Whew. And as a caregiver, that one is a toughie. Acceptance. Oh, we have a whole segment on radical acceptance and letting go. Let's do a quick exercise in letting go. Take your hands, and I'm assuming you have access to your hands. If you have neuropathy in your hands, you can also tense your shoulders instead. But if you have access to your hands, make a fist with the hands. And if I were to tell you to let go of an experience you just had with a friend, whether it was good or bad, or neutral, or if you are trying to change something that feels really hard, like a habit, and I say, let go, let go, let go. Do you know what normally people do? They actually grip tighter. So on your next breath, instead of thinking, let go, consider saying, soften. And what happens to your hands? Ease, options, curiosity, and start to uncurl your hands. Receiving. And notice when you have your hands open that it's a whole lot easier to have other options. And now instead of imagining letting go, imagine holding. whatever that experience is, or person, or thing. So you don't necessarily have to put it down, but can you just hold it so you can observe it, so you can be curious about it? It is very different from trying to command yourself to let go when maybe what actually needs to happen is just this gentle holding of the experience, to accept it, to not, right, judge it, to be patient with it, lots of things. And then release that. Okay, we're going to do a couple. We've got time for one or two quick practices. Oh, did someone want to say something? No. Okay. Feel free to add it to the chat box. So the pause. The pause is where it's at. If you could take your eyes just slightly off the screen, reflect for a moment, maybe on a scale of 0 to 10. Don't pick the most challenging thing that's happened to you lately. Maybe pick a 5 or less. And maybe it's something you reacted, or you said something you shouldn't have said, or you did that thing, like lacked impulse control, whatever it was. Okay. And then set it aside just for a moment. Now we're going to reimagine that you took a little pause before you decided to do it, before you reacted. So, same outcome, but you took a pause. What would that pause look like? Maybe it's being aware of the emotion. I'm really angry, or I'm really hungry, so I'm going to eat the whole cake, which was me yesterday. Going to have all of it. Um, Maybe it's like spouting out advice without being asked. What would that pause before that thing happens look like for you? Sometimes for me, it's taking a sip of water. Maybe sometimes it's standing up and moving around. So I would encourage you to do that thing. You heard me sigh. And now, is it possible to imagine that you could have a different outcome? Or if you choose the same outcome, that it was a choice rather than a reaction? So, whatever that was that you pictured today, consider rehearsing that a couple more times today, whether it's setting a phone alarm to remind you to rehearse, or jotting that down, or maybe you're going to do it when you have a meal. Like, I tend not to skip meals, but maybe you do. I don't know. But pairing it with eating lunch or eating dinner. Oh, I'm going to rehearse that thing. This thing happened, but I'm going to imagine pausing before it. Whether that's shrugging my shoulders, or swallowing, or rubbing my hands together, or wiggling in my body. Whatever I need to do to create a little pause. So then, whatever happened, that reaction might be different next time. Many practices, many times. Small moments, many times. All right, let's do one more, and this will wrap us up for today. This last one is seated or standing. Okay, so right now, choose if you have access to standing and you're able to stand, stand. If not, you can do this seated. If you have access to feeling what you're sitting on, or best, I would love for all of us to notice our feet. But if you don't have access, if you've got neuropathy or nerve damage in your feet, or you don't really feel your feet very well, you can take your hands and place them on your legs if you have access to feeling in the hands. And you could do the same thing with the hands. Imagine pushing down. So I'm going to push down with my feet, or push down with my seat, or push down with my hands. Take all of your attention to pushing down. Notice my breath got a little bit shorter as I'm pushing, 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 and then release that. What do you notice? Well, my belly got softer.
Mhm.
Even my voice changed a little bit. I don't know if you heard that. Let's
Mhm.
do it one more time. Either push with your feet, your seat, or your hands. Just notice and then release it. So, all we're hoping to do with this practice, seated or standing, is add pressure as a bit of a disruptor to create that pause. In other words, it helps us notice a sensation in the body so that maybe we have a different option. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to move through a little bit here. So as we're going to do just one last breath together, but I want to put this screen up in case you would like to do a quick screenshot again of our next session together. If you want a recording of this session, you can send me an email, caregiversretreatinfo@gmail.com. You can also find my email at caregiver-wellness.com. And the link on AARP to sign up for the next one. It is unique every time, so you have to sign up each time. It's events.aarp.org/Texas, so TX-223-MIND. Okay. So taking one more opportunity just to breathe together. A quick rule of thumb is to just notice that the body is already breathing. So just notice. Or maybe you were holding your breath, but the body is already breathing. You wouldn't be here if it weren't. So the body is already breathing. Okay. Using the breath as a way to regulate. Some people, it makes it feel just a little more anxious, but for others, it can be quite calming and soothing. One of the techniques that I find that meets me in the middle is just to notice that the body breathes itself. In other words, your body is constantly working toward your well-being. Isn't that great? How do I know this? Well, if you get a paper cut, it heals. Anyone still have a paper cut from last week, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago? Nope. The body is healing itself. So I would love to, as we wrap up today, thank you again so much for just the opportunity to be with you, to share these practices. I would love if you would share just maybe one or two things in the chat box that you're learning. If you want to shoot me that email and share what you're learning and experiencing, I would be delighted. And I cannot wait to see you all again in 2 weeks. Each session will be different and we'll cover different topics. And hopefully today was just a really nice introduction to meeting yourself where you're at and move in the direction of well-being in your daily life. So I thank you all for being with us and taking the time to be here.